Welcome to Matter. My name is Stephen Collins. I'm the CEO here, and I am very sorry to keep you waiting. We're now, a few minutes past. We say we're going to start. So the mayor is the mayor's coming, as I think you all know. He's in the building. He got hung up on a phone call. I'm told it was with the president, and he's solving the healthcare problem right now. And so we decided not to interrupt him. Let him finish the phone call, and then he'll be up in a moment. So we're going to just rearrange the program a little bit and get started. And I apologize. Hopefully some of you had a chance to get a cocktail beforehand, and you'll all have a chance to get one afterwards. So Matter, for those of you who haven't been here before or haven't been here recently, we are a healthcare technology innovation center and incubator. We work with about 200 healthcare startups, increasingly globally, but mostly in Chicago. And we work with 70 partners, which include universities, hospital systems, pharmaceutical companies, device diagnostics. And our thesis around innovation is that by bringing this community together, we can solve really big problems and really big challenges in healthcare. Our mission is to mobilize a community to improve health and care for every patient. And by the way, if you are born into this world, you are a patient. When you walked in, for those of you who made it to the reception desk, you saw something inscribed on the wall. It says, "We are a community of healthcare innovators to aspire to heroic change." And tonight, we are going to be talking about exactly that. We opened about 2 years ago here, and we have, in that time, built one of the largest communities in the world of people who are passionate about solving healthcare problems. And tonight we marshal that community to address a disease that very few people have heard of and too few people are building solutions for. We have several partners tonight. So one of them is IDEO. At Matter, we've had a long relationship with IDEO since before the name existed, because they're the ones who came up with it. They came up with our logo. They really helped us in the ideation stages of Matter. They've been a terrific partner of ours ever since, and they have really spent a great deal of time mapping out the journey of someone living with idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis. They will be talking about that more in a moment. And our other partner for tonight, who's really been driving this project, is Three Lakes Partners. And Three Lakes Partners is a group we got to know approximately 6 months ago. And I'll tell you, I have never met a group so passionate about solving a healthcare problem than this group of people. Their passion is infectious. Their commitment to this patient population and to this disease is really quite remarkable. And it has been truly a pleasure to work with them, to get to know them, and we're just at the beginning, and we are going to do really great things together. So I want to bring up Elizabeth Estes from Three Lakes Partners, who is going to share a little bit more about what the challenge is and a little bit more about the work that they've done and where they're going. So please welcome Elizabeth Estes.
In early January, I got the chance to go to the Consumer Electronics Show with Steve, and we got to go fly drones and do all sorts of other things, and we got to know each other there. But we were out there trying to find innovation and innovative devices to help in the healthcare space. And Steve and Miriam and Melissa and all the team at Matter, there is no better place for healthcare in the Midwest than this. So congratulations on what you've done, and thank you so much for what you've done for this event. So welcome, everybody. We're so glad you're here tonight to support this mission. Steve and Melissa promised a packed house, and I think they delivered, so we're very appreciative of that. There's a great saying, I'm going to tell you a few things about who we are at Three Lakes Partners. There's a great saying that says the master has failed more times than the beginner has tried. We're the new kid on the block in IPF, and we know that. Three Lakes Partners is a venture philanthropy organization with the sole focus of investing in the fight against idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis. For us, this is personal. All of us that are involved in this have been affected by this disease. This organization was started by passionate people, personally impacted. We aren't seeking donations from others, and we have no hidden agenda. It's about as pure as it gets. We want to match resources and effort with a personal mission, and it's the perfect combination to make meaningful impact. We're going to do that. We exist on behalf, maybe, there we go, of patients and caregivers, and we're committed to scientists and researchers who've spent their lives battling this mostly unknown disease. You can see this logos here. Today, we started with a scientific meeting at noon today, and we'll end at noon tomorrow. And we have 25 of the top researchers here right now with us that have been tackling and fighting the science and biology side of idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis from institutions all over the United States and the world. These are the best of the best, and we are resolute in our commitment to them in funding collaborative science and innovative research and technologies to fight this disease. If I could have our key opinion leaders and our observers who took part in today's session and who have been fighting this disease behind the scenes without the support that they have deserved for many, many years, if they could stand up and we can give them a round of applause. Thank you, too, to the advocacy groups who have taken part in this and who have been supportive. From the very beginning, the American Lung Association was on board with us and was supportive of this. We appreciate Harold Wimmer, the CEO, being here tonight. Also, we'd like to thank Action Pulmonary Fibrosis from the UK. They're here as well. PF Warriors and Bill Vick, who you're going to hear from later, the largest patient group in the country. Bill is an IPF patient and is a warrior in every sense of the word. And also to the Pulmonary Fibrosis Foundation for being here tonight and supporting these efforts. So what is IPF? It's an incurable, irreversible lung disease. It's heterogeneous in its origin and how it attacks people. It's a diagnosis by elimination. This is a disease that takes an average of 27 months to diagnose. There's 5 million people living worldwide with IPF. And in the United States, 40,000 people die a year of IPF, the same amount that die of breast cancer. And no one's ever heard of this disease. Why? We think because it's a disease of the aged. The average age of diagnosis is 65 years old, but there is a familial link in families that can cause younger people to be afflicted too. IPF patients avoid public places. They're desperate for air. Their lifeline is a heavy oxygen tank. It's a brutal disease. As one clinician told us, they are grieving for breathing. The best way to understand this disease isn't to hear a bunch of stats from me. It's actually to hear it from those who battle it every day.
What is it? Lung disease. Your
We knew nothing about it.
how is it?
To be honest, it's very frustrating. I had cancer last year. And to be able to say I have cancer and everybody knew what that meant, and to say I have IPF, which ultimately may take my life, people don't understand the implications of that.
I wear a mask. One day I was standing in the line at the pharmacy and a lady turned around to me and said, "Are you really sick? Are you bringing all kinds of cruddy germs and stuff?" And I looked at her in horror and said, "Oh my God, no, I'm trying to protect myself." And she said, "Well, what do you mean?"
I'm more susceptible to heat
Like in the summertime, trying to work outside was a bigger problem.
I'm sensitive to cold. Too much cold weather affects my breathing.
I just can't take that deep breath. My lungs don't fill up. And that's probably the biggest difference is, you know, you just want so desperately to just get that big inhale. And for me, trying to do that causes nothing more than a terrible coughing fit.
Get up at night, go to the restroom, you're usually puffing pretty hard when you get back. So it's been a life changer having it.
One of the directors that we sat down with gave us some valuable advice early on, and he said, don't live the disease, live with it. And that means not to dwell on every aspect of the condition and the disease and the problems that you have and borrow in trouble for the future. Take every day and live. Don't sell your house, don't completely shut down. Do it as long as you can, and when you can't anymore, find ways to adapt.
You know, trying to raise awareness is something that I would be very grateful for. If any endowment could do that, that's the only thing I can hope for.
These were all recorded in Dallas, Texas by our partner IDEO. I also want to mention that none of those patients would wear their cannulas or would wear their oxygen. They didn't want to wear them. They didn't want to be seen with that. But they were recorded by our partner IDEO, the human factors and design firm and Matters partner. Over 12 weeks, IDEO interviewed dozens of patients, caregivers, and clinicians. Toy, Atit, Don, can you guys stand up from IDEO? Their work is what propelled us to do this today. I wanted Toy to come up here really quickly. The mayor's not here, so you get to dance. How's that? Now, one of the challenges that we gave to IDEO was to understand the lives and the challenges of those with IPF and their caregivers. And our challenge was, how do we impact positively their quality of life? So you did most of these interviews. I want you to come up over here for a minute. You did most of these interviews, and I'm just curious if you could tell everybody probably the thing that hit you the most and that struck you the most.
Yeah, I think I've done a lot of healthcare projects in the past. I worked in cancer before this, and what's powerful about working on this project in particular is the resilience and the need to continue living a normal life and accepting and making meaning out of the time that they have. And what we realized was the lack of knowledge and support and hope that they're actually given with this disease, and making sure that the time they have is in their control. And what we've kind of, out of this, and you'll see it in some of the materials that Elizabeth shows you, out of this, how can we just bring products and services that exist in other diseases, other parts of our life to these patients so that in that time, they can maintain some sense of normal. Leaving the house, being with friends and family, like the little things that we take for granted that are now it's like running a marathon just to go outside to get your mail. And I think that acknowledging that is huge for us.
Thank you very much, and thanks for the work that IDEO has done. We're going to call up our panel. So we're going to have 4 people come up here, if I can get the stools. So moving around here a little bit, but we're going to invite Atul Butte, I don't know where he went, there he is, to come up. Yvonne Rosas as well. Kathy Lindell, and Bill Vick. So let me talk a little bit about this. We mentioned that Three Lakes Partners, we're going to bring you some chairs, guys. Three Lakes Partners is actually looking at this disease state holistically. And we're looking at this in 3 phases that we're all doing parallel pathing right now: short-term, mid-term, and long-term. In the short term, it's quality of life, and that's why you're all here tonight, to hear about the challenge, the biggest challenge in Midwest healthcare history. In the midterm, we're here to talk about device and diagnostic and repurposing drugs. We're working on that at the same time. Failed and shelved compounds that maybe didn't make it through a clinical trial, but might, or from some other disease state, but might have application here. And then on long term, we're looking at diagnostics and de novo therapeutics. Good thing that came off. You guys are up here for me. But in the short term, we're going to talk about quality of life, and we'll get to that challenge announcement pretty quickly. But before we do that, I want to talk with our experts who came. Many of you have heard the name Atul Butte. He is the inaugural director of the Institute of Computational Health University at Health at University of California, San Francisco, UCSF. And he's the executive director for clinical informatics across the 6 UC medical centers. He's authored over 125 scientific publications. He's founded 2 biotech companies. He's wrote a book on microarray analysis, which I have 3 copies of that. That's amazing. Yeah, it's me. I'm hoping you can sign one before you leave. And he has been a frequent speaker at TED-Med. Atul Butte is well known, and I introduced him earlier today and said, and he's friends with Mark Zuckerberg, so that's kind of fun. Yvonne Rosas is a clinical scientist at the Harvard Medical School, down there at the end, and Brigham and Women's University. He spent his life in translational investigation of pulmonary fibrosis, from biomarkers to genetic links. He's a leader in this field. He's led many clinical trials and is sponsored in many ways by the NIH, and he helped moderate our panel today, and he was amazing, and I think we had a good time doing that. Kathy Lindell, one of the first people I met when we started off on our journey to understand IPF way back in October at the University of Pittsburgh, and we walked out of that room, and all I could think of was, wow, if they're all like this, we're gonna solve this disease, because her passion is infectious. So Kathy Lindell is an RN and a master's degree in pulmonary nursing and a PhD, and is solely focused on the quality of life of IPF patients. She's a research assistant professor of medicine and clinical nurse specialist in ILD, interstitial lung diseases, at the University of Pittsburgh. And as I said, she is a passionate advocate for patients and their quality of life. And last but not least, I mentioned him earlier, Bill Vick. He's an IPF patient since 2011. He's an advocate, he's an activist. He's promoting awareness and about living with the disease, and I'm gonna let him tell you about that. He's an odds buster, I can tell you that much. He was told in 2011 he only had 3 years to live, but he was determined to live it fully. And he founded one of the largest IPF support groups in the United States, the PF Warriors, which comes naturally to him because he is a veteran of our country as a Marine. So he's based in Dallas, and he is a wonderful man. So you guys, thank you so much for being here. Atul, I'm gonna start with you. We had a conversation today, and you hear a lot in the healthcare space about big data and about the changes that are happening in healthcare today. Can you talk quickly about, first of all, just healthcare generally and how big data can change that?
Yeah, sure. So thanks for having me here, and thank you all for coming out tonight. I think this is a great evening, and I think we need to all make a difference for IPF. So I get to think a lot about data and big data. I think a lot about how to use this data for something called precision medicine today. Precision medicine to me means that we're going to have to start thinking about patients, not just based on codes that doctors assign kind of randomly sometimes, but also based on the measurements we're getting from these patients. Measurements like the DNA measurements and other molecules, but also future measurements like how are you breathing, how are you doing at home, what can your devices at home tell us about you, and your wearables and all that. And it's not just about you, but just to learn about others with the same disorders or other disorders in the population, and what are we doing with all those patients, all that medical care. I think we got to use all that data now to try to figure out what we can do better for you as a patient, for all of us as eventual patients. And to stop just thinking about disorders maybe as just singular kind of concepts, but thinking about them for the molecular world.
So if you talk about it, you look at cancer. Cancer used to be cancer, and then it was breast cancer, and then it became more bifurcated all the way down the line. Same concept, right?
Yeah, sure. Let me give you some illustrations here for a second. I always bring my props here.
I've never met him with, he doesn't have these with him. I'm not kidding. He carries these around.
My bag here, right? So this is an example of what I mean here. So this is a book from 100 years ago, Manual of International List of Causes of Death. It's from 1909. When old doctors die, this is their trash, so you can buy these on Amazon. This never leaves my bag because it keeps teaching me, right? So I look up pulmonary fibrosis here, right? Idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis. And you go to lung section, it says, yeah, there's a code here, 92 for pneumonia, 93 is pleurisy, code 95 is gangrene of the lung. Didn't even know you could get that. And then code 98, it says everything else about the lung, other, okay? And there's bleeding in the lung, stones in the lung, oh yeah, and there's fibrosis of the lung. It's the other category, right? This is 100 years ago. Now, you would think You would think we have improved in 100 years. You would think that, okay? So this is what we call ICD-2, the second issue. We're at ICD-10 now, right? So I'll look it up. What is our ICD-10 code for IPF today, right? It's J82.112, right? I'm just hearing
Kathy knew it by heart, yeah.
by heart, right? What does that J code mean, right? The J means it's in the lung. It's in the 80s, that means it's other respiratory disorders. It's in 84s, that means it's other interstitial lung disorders. It's in the 84.1s, that means it's the other lung interstitial disorders with fibrosis. So we've moved from it being an other to an other of an other of another. We have got to do better with this disorder than to just keep marginalizing it into those margins.
So Atul, how can we do that with big data? What does big data do for IPF?
Use my props. We know scientists have been using genomics, using DNA and RNA and protein, all these kind of nifty measurements from the genome era, and we want to use all of these best scientists to give us their best data, not just us, but everyone. You know, I always show these kinds of gadgets. You put samples, 100 samples on these, you get the readouts of all the genes in the genome. And what's amazing is a lot of this data is now publicly available. It's available to you and me and everyone else because the scientists share their data. They have to because of NIH and journals. And the visual I want you to think about is to replace old books like this with devices and data like this. And all this data is sitting there. There's only so much even all the experts here in the room can do. I think the idea is to get more people from all over the city and all over the world to use this kind of data and other types of data to make a difference for IPF.
Thank you very much. We are so proud to have Atul here. This is his third conference this week, so he is very much on the conference circuit, and I guarantee you're going to hear more about Atul Butte in the next few weeks. So thanks. Yvonne, Dr. Rosas from Brigham and Women's and Harvard Medical School. Grab that microphone. So the average takes 27 months to be diagnosed with IPF. Why is this such a difficult disease to diagnose from a clinician perspective?
It's complicated. I think part of the problem stems from the fact that development has led to an overproduction of lung in humans. So we can have disease in the lung without having any symptoms. So patients can actually have disease for months, years, and actually not noticing. The other thing may be that some of you in the room that are above the age of 30 are starting to think that some of your symptoms may actually be related to not exercising, getting old, and some of the symptoms that you may start happening doesn't really concern you. You think this is normal. I mean, that's a part of it. At least that's the patient's. There's also the physician's. This is a rare disorder. So despite the fact that we try to do the best training we can over a period of 4 years, we don't learn it. We need the experience and the knowledge related to interacting with patients and having the education that will allow us to make this diagnosis. And again, that's why it's complicated, because it's very difficult in the medical school curriculum to include all these rare disorders. If you combine all these factors together, the bottom line is that in average, patients, when they complain of shortness of breath, they have pneumonia.
Right.
Or it's 10 times more common to have COPD than having IPF. And so there's many reasons why it takes so long. That doesn't mean that there's not things that we could do to actually change this landscape. We can talk about those, but I think there are reasonable explanations as to why it takes so long.
So talk really quickly about oxygen, because this is an issue that we know from your patients, and I think you said you had one yesterday.
So I actually, I think I was talking with Tim, who's in the audience, and I had received earlier an email requesting that I see a patient urgently. The urgent visit was actually a transfer of care from a patient who had lived in New Jersey and was actually moving to the Boston area for better support, had more family. Lovely 83-year-old female, been diagnosed with IPF since 2000. Had a mild form of dementia, and was using her oxygen, which was at rest, and actually was not using her actual exercise. It made perfect sense to her because she had the oxygen accessible to her when she was sitting down, because she had to walk to the kitchen or to the restroom. The cord was not locked. And there's many reasons why that doesn't make sense to a pulmonologist or somebody who has experience with lung disease, but for this patient it made perfect sense. And I think the challenge with oxygen is related to education, it's related to access, and it's related to a number of complexities related to the delivery. And I think we have an expert in the room that can tell us more about it, but it's a huge problem for IPF patients, and something that I think you're getting at can be resolved.
Right, for the innovators and the entrepreneurs in the room, pay attention to that, because I think that'll be part of what this conversation is moving forward. Kathy Lindell, the first time I met you, you talked about oxygen, you talked about the frustration, and you talked about the lack of education for your patients, not just with the oxygen situation, but just generally overall. Can you address that?
Well, first of all, I saw just there are many patients here who are on oxygen. So could you stand for a minute? Who are or are not?
Who are on any patients who are on oxygen who aren't wearing it tonight?
So these are the people we have to salute because they're dealing with this day and day. So here's, in my clinical practice and in most people who care for patients who have scarring lung diseases, these patients need a higher flow of oxygen. So it's not just what has typically been available. As oxygen has, availability has increased, there are so many types of oxygen equipment that are available, but they're not all easy to use, and they're often misunderstood. So an ideal patient with scarring lung disease would be tested at rest, would be tested with exertion, would be tested with pulmonary rehab or like vigorous exercise, and would be tested with sleep, and then would receive the equipment that delivers that type of prescription that individual needs. And what we find is that doesn't happen.
And how about the education generally about the disease?
Well, what we find is that many of the patients are getting their education from the driver who delivers the oxygen. And then what the other major problem is, many of us who care for people with scarring lung disease know that as the disease progresses, the oxygen needs increase, and we try to test our patients at each visit, but that doesn't always happen. So you may have somebody whose needs have increased, and they still have the old equipment. So we could do much better.
We can do much better, and we're going to talk about that here in just a minute. Really quickly, to wrap it up, Bill Vick. So you and I have had many conversations. What's it like to be an IPF patient?
Thank you. Hi. Well, hard to describe. Let me show you.
Okay.
I think everyone has a little envelope. You have to humor me here. There's a little straw inside. I'd like you to take that straw.
Little coffee stir, yeah.
You too, Mr. Mayor. Take your straw. Here's what I want you to think about. There's 150,000 people like me that live every day with pulmonary fibrosis. Like this lady here and the gentleman over here that have to have supplemental oxygen. So what is it like to live with pulmonary fibrosis? Just take and kind of hold your nose and put the straw in your mouth and just breathe for 11 seconds. That's what it's like to be a patient.
24/7.
Think of that. Every day, every night, every morning. That's what it's like.
I think life's kind of the sum of the choices you make. And sometimes choices are made for us. I had a choice made for me 6 years ago. I was living the good life. My wife Patty and I were planning our 50th wedding anniversary. My 2 daughters and 5 grandsons had good lives. We were living the American dream in every respect. I was training for my first triathlon. I was 3 years old, and I was fit. I was a masters competitor. And so my swim times started to drop. All of a sudden I went from 4,000 yards to 3,000 yards. And then I dropped down from 3,000 yards to 2,000 yards. So I went to my doctor, not because I was sick or my short of breath. I was worried about my times. So luckily, my doctor gave me a high-resolution CT scan. And I was told by a pulmonologist at that time to come down to his office, which Patty and I did. And we sat in a little private waiting room. And he stuck his head in the door and he said, Mr. Vick, we've got your test. I said, well, great, what's the deal? So we have a lung disease. I said, okay, well, what do we do? He said, well, it's called IPF. There's nothing we can do. And I said, nothing? He said, no, there's nothing. He said, come back in 6 months if you want some more tests. But there's no test that will fix it. There's no drug that will cure it or slow it down or stop it. Go home, get your affairs in order, and prepare for the inevitable. Well, I went home and prepared for 5K one. So I think life is choices, and I think a lot of our lives are attitude.
Yep.
And I look at this group tonight, and I think to myself that in the short time we've been here, there's already been 2 people that have died of pulmonary fibrosis. Since I've been diagnosed, there's been over 250,000 people that have died. Every week, I personally lose 4 to 5 friends that I know through my networking in my groups. So I would encourage you all to be aware of the symptoms of shortness of breath, of fatigue, of rapid loss of weight. All of those things aren't necessarily age or being out of shape. There's something you want to go to your doctor and knock on the door and say, hey, doc, I want a high-resolution CT scan. And I would encourage you to do that. It would make my day and my life. And I have to tell you, for all of the patients that are watching this, I just hope that they, in turn, have the same feeling of contribution and thanks to everything that Three Lakes Partners is doing and the things that all the researchers and doctors that are here today are doing. And it's a great opportunity, I think. And if I was a little less gray in the hair, perhaps, this is a market I'd be seizing and going after because it's exploding with opportunity.
Thank you, Bill, very much. Thank you. Thanks, guys. Well, IDEO discovered really quickly that oxygen management is one central challenge to managing this disease. You just heard it from Bill Vick and Kathy Lindell and Yvonne Rosas. At the same time, it's ripe for innovation. It's a marketplace that would benefit from human-centered design principles and consumer design principles. These are expensive, bulky, ugly, and inefficient lifelines for these patients. Think about it. You could start your car from your cell phone. You can turn up your heat. You have fitness apps that monitor all of your sleep and your steps, but none of that is anywhere near the oxygen market. When one of these patients wants to turn it up, they have to get up, walk into the other room, and turn up the oxygen. They don't know when it's going to run out. There's no alarm that tells them that. They don't know when it's running. It's unbelievable and it's unconscionable. IDEO also discovered that there were inconsistent patient education, no digital apps currently on the market for IPF, and no innovative diagnostic tools. That's why you, the innovators and the entrepreneurs, are here. We hope to crowdsource and reward solutions to improve quality of life for IPF patients and their families in the areas of oxygen therapy, patient education, and other digital tools. So if we could have Bill Vick come back up, along with, actually before we do that, if we could have the mayor come back up, come up. Stephen, you want to come up and introduce him, and then we'll do the Catalyst Challenge. Perfect.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Thanks to our panelists. So we have the mayor here. Mayor, I told them earlier that you had gotten tied up. You were on a call with the president and had solved the healthcare issues. And so we very much appreciate that. We also, so for those of you... So the origin of Matter, just to go back in time a little bit, was when a couple of entrepreneurs walked into the mayor's office and proposed something like this for Chicago. given the fact that if you look around the Chicago area, we arguably have more healthcare assets, more healthcare expertise than anywhere else in the country. When you look at the companies, the hospital systems, the research institutions, the medical schools, the medical associations, the patient associations, it is a community second to none that we weren't leveraging to advance healthcare innovations in the way that we knew that we could. So it was really under the mayor's auspices that we were able to bring this community together. The mayor has really been, ever since he got elected, a great friend to the tech community in Chicago and really helped with 1871, with UI Labs, with M-Hub, and has really helped to put Chicago on the map as a home and a center, and is really a leader in technology innovation. So we're really glad you're here, Mr. Mayor. Thanks for being here, and please welcome Mayor Emanuel.
It would be nice, I've always promised myself when I left the White House, I would never, ever have to deal with healthcare ever again. That was the last thing I ever wanted to try. And the truth of the matter is, even while being mayor, and I'm very proud of this because of reforms and changes we've made, Chicago's healthcare costs today are the same that they were in 2011. Through a lot of reforms, we have the largest wellness plan and other investments in that area. This was a joke. I leaned over to Bill when he was describing fatigue, out of breath, always exhausted. I said, I thought those were the manifestations of being mayor. I didn't realize it was a joke because this is a serious issue. He says, did you get yourself checked out? I said, a lot of people thought about that, not even regardless of this conference we're having, that I should get it checked out. I do want to pick up on something Steve said, and to all the experts that are here and all the innovators. Why I think this is, A, it's a serious disease, and B, it's right for Matter, and with Tom coming together to try to do something unique. Chicago did have, and the reason I wanted to help create Matter, Chicago has all these huge and significant areas of healthcare expertise. U.S. News and World Report about 3 or 4 years ago, if you looked at the 15 top teaching hospitals in the United States, 5 of them were in the Chicago area. 1/3 here. You can look in the pharmaceutical space, you can see that. You can look at in not just the pharmaceutical companies, also then in the research capacity that existed here in the city of Chicago, not just teaching hospitals, but the research capacity that was here in the city of Chicago. And if you looked at it from development of companies and next stage companies, 6 of the 7 top private equity firms focused just on healthcare companies are based here in the city of Chicago. With all that intellectual capital, institutional kind of foundational structural strength, Chicago wasn't leveraging it to be in the forefront of some of the most important both devices, medications, and other types of healthcare innovations. That was the basis for Matter. What Chicago also has, which is strong, is people like Tom and all the other people that have taken a personal pain and are trying to then turn it into a public good. That's the history of the city when you go all the way back to the Chicago fire. Our ability of individuals to step forth beyond their company, beyond their own personal interests, to doing something for the public good that goes beyond their company, because they know the bottom line for their company is not their only driving force. And I think we, in this situation with a particular disease that really goes undiscovered until it's, I don't want to say too late, but undiscovered, unnoticed, until the symptoms become too severe. We're bringing together the 2 great strengths of our city, our innovation, our challenge, our creativity, and our entrepreneurship to do something significant about a disease that, I got to be honest, until tonight and other nights, I did not know had it really existed at the depth that it exists. And so to Tom, to not just your generosity, but your own individual situation, to willingness to step forward and then challenge people to step up and use their creativity to solve a problem that for too long goes undisclosed and undiscovered. I want to thank you for stepping forward, and I want to thank Matter for hosting what is now the largest medical prize challenge in the Midwest. And to all the experts that are here, this is really your day, and also to the patients that are living with this and their families. Because nobody, when it comes to a sickness, this I can say as the son of a pediatrician. I know you thought I was going to say something else. The son of a pediatrician. nobody goes through an illness themselves. Their family goes with it with them. And I want to thank you to the families and the individuals that are struggling with this for being part of this effort also. And there is hope. Life is a series of choices. Some of it is attitude. But this challenge will give us and help all of us coming together to find a cure to this disease. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. If we could have patient advocates Bill Vick and Teresa Barnes come up along with Tom Hervis and the mayor, and Ken Bahk, the managing director of Three Lakes, if we could. We're honored to announce, don't do it yet, guys. We're honored to announce the largest challenge prize in Matter history and the largest challenge prize ever in Midwest healthcare. We made this prize significant because it is significant. It's significant to the patients and their families, and we wanted to bring attention to the disease of IPF. We're proud and excited. You can do it now, Mr. Mayor, Tom. We're proud and excited to announce the $1 million IPF Catalyst Challenge. This challenge is designed to positively impact patients and caregiver quality of life. So for the innovators and the entrepreneurs who are in the room, over the next few months, we'll be placing video, audio, photo, and other assets on your website for you to review, for you to engage with, and for you to ideate from. We'll provide mentorship, access to knowledge, and experts. At the same time, our partner, Common Pool, there's the challenge website, ipfcatalyst.com. At the same time, our partner, Common Pool, who's currently running the $100 million MacArthur Prize, will be working on the criteria for this. We'll begin accepting applications at the end of summer, and we will award this prize by the end of the year. For us, the criteria is the biggest impact on patient quality of life. So we'll be working with you, putting out weekly updates, and we want to bring this to life together. We don't have all the answers. You individually don't have all the answers, but together we can do this. We can have a dramatic impact on the lives of IPF patients and caregivers around the world. Thanks, guys. So, another photo op here. I'll let them do the photo op here. If you're interested in participating or want to find out more about the prize and get access to the assets that we'll have, and this is some of it, and you can see some of it out in the kiosks, we encourage you to go see that out there. You can see this is a patient journey, This is the human side of IPF. IDEO did an amazing job with this, and it really will help to tell the story of a patient dealing with IPF and the loop that they get in as they're trying to be diagnosed and what they go through with the misdiagnoses along the way. So if you're interested, please sign up at ipfcatalyst.com. We'll be accepting applications, as I said, and we will start awarding this by the end of the year. Thanks, guys. You can. So we want to leave you with one final thing. For the innovators and the entrepreneurs in the room, we want to go to the future. So pretend right now, if you would, that it's the year 2025. We already did that. There we go. Imagine it's the year 2025. What you're about to see does not exist. What you're about to see, the company in here is fictional. The products in here are fictional. The person in here is fictional. But the products and the company and the advances don't have to be. This $1 million challenge is designed so we can create these meaningful improvements for patient quality of life. So here's an example of Imagine If. Oh, maybe. Where's my tech genius? Got it.
For me, it all started with Dad. That was back in 2016, a totally different time. Doctors weren't even actively screening us older guys yet like they do now. So when Dad told us he had pulmonary fibrosis, it meant nothing to us until it took him from us. Now, finding it with a high-tech lung scan and running it through this image database is the norm. Unlike my dad, no lung biopsy, no trial and error. Still, so unexpected. And now it's all starting for you. You have an IPF specialist, and it's time to figure out what's next. My recommendation? Don't just live the disease. Decide to live with it. After my diagnosis, my wife Karen and I had no idea what to do. That's when we met James, our guy from the balloon support program. We sat around the dining room table with this very same diagnosis care kit. He had a good insight. Don't try to take it all in at once. The kit's designed so certain topics are right for now and others are right for later. A big help was reading the tips from other patients and caregivers. It was comforting knowing we weren't alone. And maybe you're shrugging off those samples, but in a couple of weeks, you'll be grateful for those cough drops. Are you a tech genius? We're not. Give the app a try. It gave me my first pulmonary rehab exercises to keep my strength up. Eventually, it helped Karen and me see it was time to get on oxygen therapy. You'll know when showers start to feel like an Olympic sport and arguments aren't worth the energy or air. Don't be a tough guy. If the app says it's time, then call your doc. James came back with the balloon oxygen system. He walked us through how to use it at home and what to do when I ventured out. With the oxygen setup, the app updated so I could manage it on my own. This isn't like my dad's oxygen. It's lightweight and goes where you go. Instead of sitting home all day, you can go out, still walk the dog. It'll tell you how much you have left. And when you need more, you can add the backup compressed tank for reserve air. It's smart as a whip and can control the flow for you. Like when I'd ride in the car, it turned down the flow so I didn't waste battery. Walking in the park, it turned itself up. Like I said, living with the disease. But the best part, it's educating us. It correlates my activity level, oxygen levels, how weather and pollution affects your breathing. Karen and the doctor track it all too. And make sure you share your info. Everybody's got to know exactly how it's progressing. And the app will help you do that. It's dumb, I know, but this oxygen's become my buddy, keeping me on track. We jokingly call him Oliver the Oxygen, which the grandkids love. They don't love when I sit around all day, but eventually the disease does progress, and we get older and slow down. Because of Oliver, I made it to my daughter's wedding and walked her down the aisle. It may be the last big trip I make down that aisle. I'm finding peace, though, in sharing my story with you. I hope my experience helps you live your life with IPF. And then, with Oliver's help and the experience of your journey, you'll have the chance to share your story with someone else, too. Wishing you all the best.
That could be. It's just not right now. But what didn't you see in that video? What we didn't see are what's in your head for the entrepreneurs and the innovators in the room. What can you think of? What could we do? We designed this to be a spark piece, but we know there's more. So we do hope that you're going to go to ipfcatalyst.com and you'll decide to join us in the fight. The $1 million would be nice, but the payoff and the human value will be even greater. Close the evening, I want to invite my partner in all of this, my travel buddy and my amazing friend, the managing director of Three Lakes Partners, Ken Bahk.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Thank you. I've always wanted to do that. So I'm in the unenviable position of being between you and food and beverage. So I'll be very short. First and foremost, thank you, Tom, for being the catalyst of the catalyst. Thank you, everyone in this room, for taking the time to learn more about this disease, and more importantly, learn about how we can collectively improve the lives of patients with IPF and their caregivers. Thank you to the key opinion leaders for the past, the present, and the future. And thank you to our partners in joining us in this journey. And after this, if you can please run down the hallways and see the installation so you too can feel how it is to be a patient. As of now, 7/17, April 27th, more people know about this disease than before, and this is a beginning. So, Elizabeth and I grew up in small towns, the kind of small towns that if you ask us, where are we from, we will pick the closest real city. My point is, it wasn't San Francisco, wasn't Boston, wasn't New York, wasn't Chicago. And if you asked us to draw a line between there and where we are today, it's an improbable event. Mr. Mayor, Steve, what you guys have done here at Matter, before Chicago was not on the healthcare innovation map. But we are here today, again, an improbable event. Tom also grew up in a small town. Usually not said in the same phrase as the biotech innovation hub. And again, an improbable event. Bill Vick, IPF survivor, leader, creator of PF Warrior. Did you think a year ago that you'd be in a room filled with people passionate and enthused and focused on IPF? Again, an improbable event. My point is that we realize that what we're asking for is maddeningly challenging. We realize that what we're asking for is, some will say crazy, but we realize that what we're asking for is literally on the walls of this place. We are asking for heroic change, making the improbable probable. One last comment. Elizabeth has been kind enough to be with me in our travels. And we were in London a few weeks ago visiting a key opinion leader. And he is, I would call it one of the godfathers of IPF. And if you open the Oxford English Dictionary and you open it up to professor and you close your eyes, that's him. He looks like that. He's that persona. And we asked him, what can we do to accelerate progress in this disease? What can we do to support our community in IPF? And he paused, and he closed his eyes, he leaned back in his chair, and he said, we are not yet greater than the sum of our parts. But we can be. So with that, thank you, everyone. And thank you for making this our collective journey. Have a good night.